Folks, Amy here with amyswares, and today I'm going to compare some alcohol marker-friendly inks. I have Memento Tuxedo Black, I have Gina K Amalgam, and I have a new to me Simon Says Stamp Inktense Black. So the reason for this comparison video is because I just recently acquired the Simon Says Stamp version, and I wanted to do a side-by-side comparison of these three inks. Now you can see all three of them have a felt pad. They're relatively similar in size, so I feel like they're pretty good to compare with one another. Now, as you can see, the Simon Says Stamp one is brand new, so to be fair, I did recently re-ink the Memento and the Gina K just so it's a better comparison because those are older ink pads. Those are two Copic inks that I'm going to use, and then you'll see in a moment I do bring one other sort of coloring medium into play. Now, the reason I wanted to do this is because not all inks are the same. Not all inks have the same functionality. Now, I actually started off when I first started card making and first started using any alcohol markers, I started off with the Memento Tuxedo Black. Then I went on to the Gina K Amalgam, which I thought was really cool because you'll see on the description of Gina K Amalgam ink that you can actually use it as a waterproof ink as well. So what I did in the beginning is if I was using Copics, then I would stamp with the Memento, but if I was doing something with like watercolor or water brush pens, or if I wanted something with like really fine detail stamping for letters, I would use my pigment ink, which was like VersaFine Clair, Nocturne, that kind of ink. But as you know, you can't use VersaFine Clair Nocturne with Copic inks because the alcohol will kind of eat through it and smear it. So that was kind of what I did in the beginning, was just use the Memento for the, Copic friendly, and then the VersaFine for anything watercolor. But then the Amalgam came along and said that it could be used for watercolor mediums too. So I was intrigued, and it was another, dark black ink. Now I've been watching videos and I was just curious to try Simon's version of the black Inktense ink as well, just to kind of see how it compares for kind of general stamping. Now, as you can see on this example, all the stars on the left with that Alt New stamp set are stamped one time. The ones on the right are stamped 2 times. Now here's the other thing I'm going to bring in. I have a Corinne water marker or water brush pen, and I also have a an actual like Arteza water brush pen. And I'm going to try and pull this out on this regular cardstock with this Corinne marker on the versions that were stamped one time. Now you'll see, stick around in a moment, I realize this isn't the best paper to be doing this on because I was working on 120-pound accent opaque, which if you've worked with a regular cardstock and tried to pull any sort of water medium around like this, you'll see that it doesn't really blend at all. It's not really supposed to, it's kind of just sucking right into that cardstock. So stick around and I'll show you a better comparison of that version in a moment. And I will also show you some side-by-side still photos that I zoom in so you can really see the difference. Now, if there's any kind of like spotting or kind of not so great stamping, that's more on me. It's not really the ink. I really just kind of wanted to show excuse me, the richness of the ink itself and whether it's smeared at all with the Copic markers. So you can see here I'm using a very, very pale yellow. The reason I'm using a very, very pale color is because the paler the color, that means there's more alcohol in that marker than there is pigment, which means it's probably more likely to smear in ink. And red I just did because red can be kind of fussy and tends to want to bleed out. So here you can see I'm comparing all three of these, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see that Simon Says stamp is really super crisp after that second stamp. So is Gina K, but it wasn't quite as crisp once I applied that alcohol ink as it was on the Simon. And on Memento, did great with alcohol. So it's just a matter of, how much darkness, the sort of richness you can get from that ink stamping. Now here I'm coming in, I'm actually stamping on Strathmore Bristol Smooth. I wanted to do a better comparison with a water medium. So what I didn't realize when I bought the Simon Says stamp, Inktense stamp, is that it's very similar to the Amalgam ink in that it claims on the back that it's also waterproof, which I did not know that when I bought it. So I really want to compare the waterproof component between these two, and then also Memento. Now, Memento claims it's water resistant. So if you've ever bought waterproof rain jackets versus water resistant rain jackets and gone to somewhere like Ireland, for example, you're probably going to notice a difference. So I was really curious to compare the three of these inks with a water element. So I wanted to stamp it on a paper that would allow me to kind of blend it around better. Now, Strathmore Bristol Smooth really does have a bit of a coating, and it allows you to kind of move these pigments around. Now, don't mind that stamping on the bottom of the Memento one. That was just me not probably drying off the stamp well enough. So it doesn't affect this comparison at all, but don't think that that has anything to do with the ink. That was just me not stamping the greatest. So here I'm coming in with the Corinne marker and then quickly pulling it out a little bit with some water and this water brush pen. So you can see you can actually blend this color down like a watercolor when you use the correct sort of paper. So I prefer this even above watercolor paper if I'm using this sort of marker, just because that plastic coating really does allow you to kind of move that around on the surface. It doesn't just suck it in right away like it would with a watercolor paper or a cardstock. Now here you can see the Simon Says stamp and the Gina K absolutely are waterproof, whereas the Memento you can see it really did kind of bleed and got a little bit gray. So that's the difference between water resistant and waterproof. So both the Gina K and the Simon Says stamp did great with the water. So Gina and Simon, again, are very similar. Here I'm zooming in on the photos here so you can see, just going to kind of come in close again so you can see the crispness with regard to the first to second stamping. You can kind of see it's not as even of coverage on the first stamp to the second, which is what you would expect. But really pay attention to whether it kind of blurs on you with that alcohol ink. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope it helps you decide what sort of black ink works great for you. I'll link everything below, and thanks for spending time with me today.